Hi, everybody. It's our CFB Talk 193. I thought it would be kind of interesting to see what would happen if we hit and toggle the video part of this particular app. So here we are. It's our first attempt at doing video. I know guests are not going to be put on video. So I just thought we'd just toss this out here. So my name is Bobak Ha'Eri. Thank you for joining us. It is Tuesday night. This is when we like to talk to you about everything that's going on here in college football. So again, turned on the decided to toggle video to see how that would go. From what I understand, it does not toggle video for guests. So if you want to be a part of the conversation, don't worry. We're not going to be throwing your face up here or anything else you decide to throw up here. But it's the off season, so why not try something different? So let's talk about what's going on. One of the kind of the side stories, one that is dear to a lot of people's hearts this week, is the new NCAA football game is coming out. And been a lot of guesses. Obviously, there was an accidental release of what looks to be the deluxe edition. Now, if you're forking over $150 for the latest college football video game, bless your heart. And you can get an idea of what that particular cover is going to look like. But there's going to be another cover release on Thursday. Supposedly, might be more of a traditional cover release. I know for another show I do, the College Football Survivor Show with Shehan Jayaraja, we kind of talked about who might be on that cover. He thinks Donovan Edwards might be featured, but there's a lot of other guys. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Quinn Ewers, only because I think few players symbolize what's going on in college football than a team that is moving conferences into one of the major conferences and is also a part of the is also a title contender and one of the more popular players right now heading into the season. So again, it's so funny for that show and on our CFB, I went ahead and took my notes and created a list of all the teams, all the games, all the college football games that preceded the one that's coming out this summer. And it was really interesting to see who has been on the cover. I am old enough, as you can see, to have played games on Genesis when Genesis was brand new, to have played games on the PlayStation. And I remember when there was more than one college football video game. So in addition to the NCAA football series, which started as Bill Walsh College Football, there was NCAA Game Breaker by Sony. There was a couple of games by Sega Sports, 2K2, 2K3, and even a few earlier Sega games like the College Football National Championship. So again, if you'd like to join the conversation, hit request. You're not going to be on video. Don't worry. I just thought it would be fun to try this out for one of these shows. I kept seeing this in the bottom whenever you have the opportunity to start and fire up a show, and it would say like, oh, would you like to try video? I thought, why not? So that's what we're doing today. But if you'd like to talk about anything in college football, just go ahead and hit request. Who is Mage Ingrid, friend of the show, who's winning Best in Show tonight at the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show? I admit I am not following that. That was always a nightmare for kids like me growing up because it always used to preempt wrestling when you were a kid. Like you'd always knew if you were a big, and we're talking WWF era here. That's my age. You always used to rue the day the Westminster Dog Show would show up because it would interfere with that. Oh, Ski Mask Smurfy, I see you want to join. So let's go ahead and add you. It's kind of weird because, again, it's all through my phone. So I have to kind of touch, the screen to get people up here. But Ski Mask, what's going on, man?
Oh, hey, Bobak.
Hey.
Yeah, you brought up NCAA Game Breaker. That's a very long trip back in time.
It was fun to go and look at who was on the cover of Game Breaker because I had the edition that had Ron Dane. That was like 2001 when I went back and looked. But when you're kind of
I had 2000.
Oh, was that the Scott? No, that was Cade McNown, wasn't it?
I can't remember. I believe it was Washington Huskies. Someone from the Washington Huskies on the cover.
Well, I think that was UCLA's Cade McNown on that edition. And it's so funny, too, because the year before that, if you ever pick up 1999 college Game Breaker, the Sony game on PlayStation, Scott Frost was the cover guy on that as the quarterback of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So it's been fun. I believe Michigan is one of only two teams that's had more than, I think it's had like 3 players on the cover of these games because it's had Woodson, Howard, and obviously Denard Robertson, who is no longer working for the Michigan Wolverines, but we can get to that later. But
hey, take it easy on us.
Oh my goodness. So what's going on with you? What else is on your mind? I mean, there's a lot of other stuff going on. I mean, I've been reading through all of the house case stuff because for those who may not be familiar, there is a case out there that could very well change college football very quickly. I mean, it's interesting too because I think a lot of people haven't been paying attention to it. But we can get to that in a second. What else is on your mind?
I was just gonna say that I guess I guess we're sort of getting to the dead period because everybody's getting bored now, and everyone's trying to pick the team. So it should be these teams versus the field. And the common teams out here coming up is just Ohio State and Texas versus the field to get the Natty. Who do you feel is probably best in line right now?
To go to the national championship, to win it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, it's kind of, I feel lame doing the Ohio State Georgia thing, but they are the most stacked. They are the most likely. But if you're going to go with the dark horse teams, Oregon isn't the dark horse. Oregon's also going to be, I think that game at Autzen Stadium in October, that's going to be the game that may determine the Big Ten. And who knows, it might be with the lack of divisions, they could play again in the conference title game. I don't think you're going to get much threat from USC. But I think if you're thinking another team that might be dark horse, just based on can they get it together and they have the talent and it would be unexpected, would be Miami only because of who they've got in the transfer portal. Can Cam Ward get it together? Can he play a little bit better? Obviously, they got Martinez from from Oregon State, the running back. They've got a lot of talent. They just need to put it together and not do stupid things like not take a knee. Texas is obviously a major contender. I mean, there's it's hard to not go away from the major contenders right now, the ones that you kind of your brand names. I mean, Michigan would be a less likely one. I mean, could they do it? Yes, they kept a lot of talent, especially on defense. But you'd have to see how the quarterback play adapts to that. Oklahoma might be an interesting one too, quite frankly. They've got a great, with Jackson Arnold, they've got a good team overall. And I think maybe people will look past them because Texas is also heading into the SEC. But I think that's a great question. I mean, I'm not a person to necessarily throw out a team that would be all that wild at this point. We'll see how it kind of goes out. We'll see who. Hopefully, no one gets injured in fall practices before we kind of run up to this fall camp. Pardon me. So we'll see where it goes. But that's a great question. Let's see here. I see someone else wants to join the conversation. Pack Scoops. We'll go ahead and let you up here. Just feel free to unmute and start talking. Always enjoy hearing from folks who want to talk college football. What's on your mind?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for bringing me on here. Just had a question about two teams that I have a tie to that are actually playing early in the year in Charlotte. So Tennessee and NC State. Mm-hmm. Just was kind of curious of anything on that matchup or just, if that's a fun game you're interested in. And then two, just maybe your thoughts on the ceiling maybe of each team. I know we're kind of talking about long shot teams, but maybe even long shot to the playoff is another interesting discussion as well.
I think both of those teams heading into this season, while they're not necessarily at the top of the conference discussion for the SEC and ACC, are both like within the realm of like they could, if they have a good season, they could be the like unexpected but not shocking person to go to reach it all the way. Only because obviously, oh gosh, his name just slipped my mind. Was it Grayson? The North Carolina. Yeah, that's a huge impact to get on. Because for those who don't know, that's the great Coastal Carolina QB. Didn't do quite as well last season. Maybe it's because, again, he didn't have his head coach who left for Liberty. And look what Liberty did. But at the same time, I think that's going to be a pivotal game. Because I know last week we actually had a Vol on here. And we were kind of talking about that. I said, with Nico as their QB, everyone's heard all about him. He's, the be-all, end-all, and we'll all learn how to say his name by the end of the season, probably. But he gave me the key, and I felt bad because I'm like, I'm going to forget this. I'm going to forget this immediately. But he's a talented guy. We're going to learn it. We're absolutely going to learn it. But at the same time, Grayson McCall, we know who he is already. And I think with just NC State's always just kind of been there, always kind of at the edge. And David Doran, he's a good coach. It just always kind of seems to kind of hiccup somewhere. Now, Florida State. Yeah. This season, I don't think is going to be as strong. I mean, they're just replacing too many guys. Now, I'm going to say they clearly were great with the transfer portal last season. I mean, all their key players were transfers. And maybe they'll have someone ready to plug and play. But usually that's the second season after they transfer in. So I think NC State has a chance to kind of get up in there. I mean, because the other team that also gets bandied about that isn't your classic, Florida State, Clemson. Certainly, who knows what Clemson's going to do? I mean, the portal certainly wasn't their thing, and it never has been. Miami's loaded up quite a bit, but it's, again, as I said, you're kind of like, well, let's see what Mario Cristobal does with it. They're kind of like, I always thought Miami and USC are very similar, all talent with the little results, that kind of go, with a lot of draft picks. We're going to see a lot of draft picks out of this Miami team, but they may not do anything with it. But as for NC State, I think they're like Louisville. They're like the two teams where if either one were to punch through, no one would be shocked. It would shocking would be obviously like Wake Forest suddenly putting together a season this particular year, or like one of the new teams like Stanford suddenly having a run, and this seems to be their dream season. But I think NC State, particularly boy, it's late at night, but particularly if they can beat Tennessee, and that game, I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Vols have a slight edge, only because they've got some great defenders on that team, some of the best defenders in the nation. Oh my gosh, I forgot his name. They've got this one guy on the D-line who's just ferocious.
James Pierce.
Yeah. So if he, with some of the talent they have, they could stay in that game. But it's early. Who knows? That's what we love about the season. Those first couple of weeks, we start to shake out some of the teams who's the real contenders. And the wonderful thing, whoever loses this game, if you do well in the conference, if you win out in the conference, especially, which could be a tall order, especially for Tennessee, just because of who's in the SEC. This is an era where there's spots. There's more spots than there have been before. It's easy for the ACC to send two teams. I think that's plausible. I think the Big 12 could also potentially send two teams. I think we're probably looking at three teams from the Big 10 and SEC just based on how those teams rank out. But the possibility is there. So that's the nice thing about this particular scenario. And quite frankly, well, I'm not going to say this is going to happen, but if you're an ACC fan, think about it this way. If you, and I love this because it's happened in other conferences, but not at a power conference. Although one time the Pac-12 came close. Let's say NC State, I'm not saying it's going to happen, loses all their non-conference games, but wins all their ACC games, or wins just enough to win the conference and win the title game. They're going to be the 4 seed. They're going to automatically almost certainly be the 4 seed, only because it would take a miracle for one of the G5 programs to not be one of the top 4 conference finishers. And the top 4 conference finishers are automatically the top 4 seeds. They're not the rank. Their rank could be lower. Their rank could absolutely be lower. They could, because the poster child for this is 1999 Stanford, because that was when Tyrone Willingham, somehow he lost, I think, every non-conference game, lost a game in the Pac-12, and then managed to go to the Rose Bowl with a team that was not ranked the week before they entered the Rose Bowl. And then they lost the Rose Bowl to Wisconsin, as I recall. But so that theory is out there. The only knock on that is the teams will probably be ranked a little higher this time around, only because whoever, in this scenario, whichever ACC team it is, let's say it's NC State, they would have to also win the conference title game. So supposedly that would probably be a better ranked team than your normal. Like, you're not going to be the Big Ten West, spitting out some random team that Ohio State just clubs like a baby seal. This is going to be, we're going to see teams that might rematch. We're going to see teams that might be better. But that's a fun one to think there. That's never been out there. It's never been possible that you could have a team just, not necessarily win them all, but win enough and not only go into the playoff, but have a first round bye in the process.
Yeah, I think that's a great point on the seeding, because I don't think anyone, just kind of coming from, even if they're an NFL fan or just don't really know the seeding, it's going to be a lot different than someone that just thinks the 4th best team, quote unquote, in the nation will be, in that 4 spot. So I think that's something that will take, just some getting used to for people.
Yeah, I think some of the casual fans who may be lightly paying attention to college football this season are going to be really surprised when they start to see the seeding towards the end, because we're going to see a team like Utah or Oklahoma State or whoever decides to come out of the Big 12 as one of those. And then perhaps more of a brand name out of the ACC. I'm not sure. But the Big 12 is a total confusion right now for, I think, a lot of fans who didn't realize or are only coming to terms with the fact that Texas and Oklahoma aren't there anymore. But yeah, it's going to be exciting. I can't wait. And that game absolutely at Bank of America Stadium is one I'm circling, because that is that USC and LSU and Vegas and a couple of these other games, those are the ones where, first of all, the 12-team playoff, and even if they expand it, they encourage games like that more than they used to, because those used to be a big deal. I remember going to FedEx Field in DC in 2004 to see Virginia Tech when they were when they were really like a national title contender year after year against USC in the BCA Classic. Like those games, sometimes they'd be a Jerry World. Sometimes you'd have a big matchup, a preseason matchup or an early season matchup of non-conference games against major opponents, and those kind of started to dry up, I think, in the 14 playoff, because you were trying to improve your resume so that you can get in one of those top 4 spots. But now you can afford to drop a game if you don't get totally blown out. Now, if you get completely wrecked, might take a little bit of help to get all the way through, and you still might make the playoff. Don't get me wrong. If you turn it around and kind of win your conference and then fight your way through, but it's a better season now. It's going to be exciting, and I kind of am looking forward to seeing if we get a team that no one expected. But like again, not out of the realm of complete. I'm not penciling in Vanderbilt right now, but I'm saying. Although, okay, wait, for one quick thing, and I'm going to get to Mac in a second here. And I'm going to go ahead and let Mac up here just so they can be up here. There we go. The teams that I would love to see make the playoff, only for the sheer scheduling, logistics, chaos, Northwestern, because some of you may know Northwestern is not playing at home for the next 2 seasons. They demolished their stadium. They are playing on a lacrosse field literally on Lake Michigan. Like, you should look this thing up. They're going to be building temporary stands, and they keep citing the Phoenix Open, the one that they set up that giant temporary stand in the middle of a golf course. That's what they're going to be doing for the next 2 years. Kansas. I hope Kansas is actually not all that impossible to imagine they could somehow finagle their way into the playoffs. If they get in and they somehow host a first round game, they also don't have a home stadium for the next 2 years. They're playing in a mix of an MLS stadium and the Arrowhead Stadium for their game. So that would be kind of a chaos factor. And then Vanderbilt, because their stadium's half built right now. They're taking it apart in sections. But that would be the miracle. Also, before I forget, Army could theoretically be in the playoff as well, and they are right now in the middle of taking apart their stadium. They just blew up half the stands, and they're going to kind of rebuild it in parts. But those are your chaos ones. If you're looking for the wildest teams to potentially host a first-round game that isn't like, a G5 team that you wouldn't expect. Although a playoff game in Boone would be fantastic. Mac, what's on your mind? Got a little static there. I can't hear you, Mac. Or can someone else hear him? And I'm just sometimes I didn't think about if this might happen. Sometimes the audio on Twitter Spaces doesn't work when I let people up. Although I'm pretty sure I heard something. Usually I don't hear anything. So if people hear Mac, definitely wave your hands. But Mac, why don't you go ahead and go again? And Pack Scoop, I saw you unmuted. Do you want to say something?
I was just going to say he might be a huge Grayson McCall fan like yourself. So maybe he's just trying to get in on the NC State.
I love it. Mac, and if you want to try and unmute again, by all means do. And if you'd like to join the conversation, please hit request. It's always fun. It's Thursday night, probably Tuesday night. It's when we like to have a conversation about anything y'all want to talk about in college football. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of also, there were so many topics I had open. You should see what I have on the other side of like a huge screen with a lot of options, so large that I'm actually having to look around by phone. Let's see here. Oh, before I forget, we've got a new college football team moving up to FBS. Some of you may have heard Missouri State, who previously actually, again, they're moving up to Conference USA. They're going to be a full member in 2025. That means we're going to have 136 FBS football teams. It was fun, as I said at the beginning of this show, when I was putting together a list of all the previous NCAA football games, all the way back from Genesis, including the ones that weren't just by EA Sports. The reason I bring that up, when they finally launched with having all the teams in D1, when it was D1A, as they used to call it, there were 108. They were so thrilled. And it was actually awkward because the first team to have 108 actually included a team that had dropped football the previous year. And that was 1990. It was, if you remember the way these games work, obviously we're waiting for college football 2025 and it's 2024. So in college football 96, at the end of the 95 season, UOP, the University of Pacific in Stockton, California, dropped football altogether. And they were what we now consider an FBS program, but they're in the game. So they had, not only did they have all the teams, they had a team that no longer had football. So kind of a neat one there. Mac, I see you want to get up. I'll let you request. I'll accept the request, and let's see if that works. So just go ahead and unmute Mac. Let's see if this one works, and then we'll get to Ski Mask Murphy.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now perfectly.
Sorry about that. I think that was my computer. So I'm gonna just say this out right now. I think the 4th seed this year in the playoff will be a G5 team.
So
I think go ahead. I think pretty much the Big 12 is going to beat itself up, and then the underdog in the Big 12 championship is going to win, causing the G5 team to get the 4th seed.
Yeah, that would be interesting. So for those at home, that would mean the G5 team has a good run. I'm not saying like Cincy level run, but they do well, and they get somewhere probably in the top 10 is what I would guess. And the Big 12 champion has been beat up in that way. Like it's kind of a dog-eat-dog conference fight. And the underdog wins in the conference title game, so they end up somewhere in the teens. That isn't that implausible. That would be that kind of a scenario. I'm still thinking the Big 12 won't have that happen, but Mac, I think if it happens, that would be the way it would occur. And the Big 12 seems to be the more likely candidate, only because the ACC seems a little more top heavy. We've went over those teams, but I think the Big 12 is more evenly matched, and I think that's that would be a fun scenario. My goodness, could you imagine? And who do you think would be the G5 champ, though? I mean, that's a big guess, but who would be your lead in that particular clubhouse?
So I think it would be 11-2 USF.
Okay, and that wouldn't be. Oh, that's interesting. So they get, and it's funny too, because if USF were to somehow, whoever the G5 team would go through, the one knock on this scenario is they wouldn't get a chance to host the first round game. They would just straight up go into the quarterfinals, which would be one of the what we consider the New Year Six Bowls, and they just rotate through. Like 4 of them a year will be the quarterfinals, 2 of them will be the semifinals, and then you have the national championship kind of bid it out like it does with the Super Bowl and games like that. But that would be interesting. Can you imagine that? That would be. We'll see which game it is. We'll see which team would be it. I'm kind of leaning towards a Boise scenario in this, but I think that's plausible. Or who knows? Maybe Tom Herman will get FAU around and we'll get something really wacky there. I kind of want to see one of those teams get ranked high enough. So again, probably higher in the top 10. Like you'd almost need a Cincy-like team where they don't quite get into because the ideal scenario for kind of the funky host that we'd get is we'd have to have a G5 team do well, but not like a Cincy level well where they finish in the top 4 seeds, but they would somehow finish high enough to be one of the top 4, 4, 5, probably 5, 6, 7, where they get to host the lower seed. So that would be an exciting scenario. I love that one. My goodness. So, go ahead.
I would do it just so the fact that USF would always brag over UCF that they made the playoff before them.
Can you imagine the team that claims their national championship because it went undefeated? I don't poo-poo that one. I think I get it, but like that would be phenomenal. And I mean, it would be a shame too, only because also, I mean, yeah, in a few years they're going to have that stadium. I mean, they're on the way. I always say USF has quietly been building a stadium up the right way, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops. Every 6 months they give us an update, and they're on track. They're just doing it the slow way.
That is correct. I believe groundbreaking is this year, homecoming week for UAB.
Exciting. I mean, that's a school that needs an on-campus stadium for sure. It's a huge university. They can fill that thing, and they're not building something Goliath. They're building something sensible. So I think that's going to be great. Do they have a name for it yet, or is that's probably TBD?
TBD.
Yeah. Excellent. Hope they get a good one there. It isn't as awkward as my favorite is Houston. When you name your stadium TD ECU, which is the touchdown for a school that they were in a conference with at one point. That was too much. Let's see here. Iman, you've been really patient. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to think that Memphis would be in a high ranking in the playoff, because when I saw the schedule, I saw they saw Florida State, and Florida State looks pretty mortal right now.
Yeah, I agree.
So Memphis, if they ever got a shot right now, this is probably their best shot right now, especially when all their starters are coming back, because that's what, if I remember, Silverfield was banking his keeping his seniors was the playoffs. So I think that they might go 11-2. Not 11-2. I meant 12-1. I don't know if they're gonna beat Clemson. I don't know if they beat Florida State, they can't beat Clemson, but I don't know.
Well, I don't think. Do they have Clemson this year? I'm looking at that.
Yeah,
schedule.
they have Florida State and Clemson.
Huh. This schedule hasn't been updated. I'm looking at, and that's on me. But yeah, because I mean, did they swap out one of the others? Because they got Troy, and Troy's traditionally strong, but obviously their head coach is at Tulane, who Memphis has at the end of the season. I think this schedule's favorable. Memphis has been the stronger team, just in the past and then currently. So I think, Memphis and Boise State and a couple of these teams, and Tulane for that matter, those are some of the teams that seem to be potentials in the clubhouse. I mean, UTSA, you can't discount the head coaching there, but I'm not sure if they're going to be quite at that level. Ski Mask Murphy, I see your hand up.
My vote is for one of the teams out of the Sun Belt East. Appalachian State, James Madison, ODU. Like, they just have a very good bunch there. I think they could possibly be the teams that make it. And only if all those teams can beat their major non-conference opponents, that could set them up to possibly be in the realm of being the team that gets a bye week as a champion. Because I do think I agree with Mac that the Big 12 is probably going to collapse in on itself, and I think we're going to find that out like week 1 with Colorado is taking on North Dakota State. So we're going to find out very early how good the conference might end up being.
Iman, I know you wanted to add something to that.
I just wanted to know because I don't think the Sun Belt East, as much as I'm a Panther fan, I don't think they got anybody serious. They're playing anybody. They're not playing anybody serious.
Well, they've got schedules that if they were to win, I loved Old Dominion being thrown out there because I'm like, there's one of our regular listeners who's a big ODU fan, and he'd be like, yeah, but I'm like, maybe they can win at South Carolina. I don't know, but then Virginia Tech with drones, man, that's going to be a tough call. App State is probably the leader in that clubhouse, maybe Georgia Southern, but Coastal, obviously Grayson McCall's no longer there. And I'm not sure if I'm thrilled with that hire. Marshall, man, I don't know. James Madison's also without the head coach. So, I mean, Kirk Cignetti he's been entertaining so far at Indiana, that's for sure. They pulled in some crazy transfers as well. So they pulled that great guy from Kent State, as I recall, that defensive end whose name has slipped my mind. But they've got some talent over there at Indiana, thanks to bringing Kirk Cignetti. But I'm not sure. Iman, keep going. It's no problem. Yeah.
Oh, I was just about to wait. You can keep going.
Oh no, go ahead. No, I kind of finished that thought. I can add more later, but
because I was about to add on to when you were talking about Troy, because Troy got Iowa, and Iowa has they have a great that you see that's the thing when it comes to the group of conferences. Conferences is probably only like one team with one good team on their record, especially because it's not the best group of 5 starters, the best group of 5 champion, if I remember.
Yeah, it is technically the one that will get in will be the highest ranked group of 5 champion. So that'll be an interesting thing to see. I think certainly though the American is still the conference to beat in terms of top to bottom strength, even though they've lost so many teams. I think with Memphis, with Tulane, UTSA, South Florida certainly could get themselves up there. East Carolina is always also one of these sleeping giants. One year they'll get it together. FAU isn't that bad, and obviously you've now got both Army and Navy in. So Army, I'm not expecting much. Navy, we've seen them before. We've seen them do it before. They could certainly get their schedule together and potentially do some stuff there. Before I forget, Missouri State. I mentioned it before. So again, they're going to be team number 136, which is kind of fun to imagine. As I kind of got sidetracked talking about the old NCAA football game there, but they're going to be in Conference USA. So it's so funny. I talk to people. People forget there's actually who's 135 because I mean, obviously, next season Kennesaw State is going to be in. They're going to be team 134. Team 135 is going to be Delaware. So the Blue Hens have already previously announced that they're also going to be jumping in on this. In fact, I think they just announced a series that's going to be between them and Coastal Carolina. So I don't know what they're going to call it. You got the Blue Hens, you got the Shaunts, which are also a rooster. I don't know if they're going to call it the cockfight or what. It'll be a fun one. I can't wait to see how that one kind of goes down. That'll be a good one to see here. Let's see what else. We also have, oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, Delaware and Colorado. Pardon me, Delaware and Coastal Carolina. Oh my gosh. So we haven't talked about what might be the cover. I came up with the most controversial cover that could be plausible, and that is, now I'm an old video game fan. I played a lot of video games in the 80s and 90s, and there were fighting games in that era, especially by a company called SNK. They had a certain art style that was kind of like, and Capcom had their own art style. In fact, they did these Capcom SNK games where they do the other guys in the style of their own, whoever was making that particular edition. But I was totally imagining like a cover of, again, all in suits, Deion Sanders and his sons in front of him with his hands kind of on either shoulder. That would be the most outrageous cover ever. I know they wouldn't do it, but at the same time, I got in this conversation with my co-host on the other show, Shahan Jayaraj of CBS. I thought, if EA was really trying to go towards casual fans, because hardcore fans are all probably pre-ordered the game. As soon as those pre-orders go up, they're going to be ordering it just because it's the first game in forever. But if they're trying to go over those games, trying to eat into the fans that may be more casual, maybe more NFL fans, but we saw what happened. Suddenly a lot of attention that had not been there before. I mean, I could think of worse things to put on the cover. I think a lot of people will be annoyed, but they would still buy it anyway. This might be the one year you can get away with that. So I don't know. Ski Mask, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm in the NCAA football subreddit, like for the game. And yeah, we've been pretty intense and we've been following everything pretty closely. So much so that we knew the cover was going to be released next week because a guy works at GameStop posted an email from another store manager saying we got information coming in. But it seems like the cover from everything that's been said, particularly from this one guy, Matt Brown, who's a reporter.
Oh yeah,
is,
Matt Brown. This is his bread and butter. He does the Extra Points newsletter.
Yeah, yeah. More than likely, it seems like the three people who we saw accidentally, because luckily I was working from home that day and I was able to check it as soon as it went inside of the subreddit and saw it on the PlayStation Store. Then they took it down for a little bit. Then it was like, well, it's too big to late cats out of the bag, so they put it back up. They said they're gonna have multiple. There's gonna be multiple covers, and each cover is gonna have a current athlete, and it's gonna be different positions for each cover. So I'm thinking more than likely it's gonna be Quinn Ewers, Donovan Edwards, Travis Hunter, and then probably each one's gonna be on a different version of the game: a PlayStation version, a PC version, and a Xbox version, or maybe a Switch version. I don't know.
Well,
But
and there were three
like,
other players. There were three other players in that image because they had Jalen Milroe, Carson
yeah,
Beck, and Quinshon Judkins in his Ohio State game.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. Quinshon Judkins with he already earned apparently a ton of helmet stickers in this photo. So so who knows? I mean, I'm curious to see, or if they go another direction. But I agree, it's going to be one of those guys, if not multiple. My problem with EA only is their messaging is really confusing because they're saying like, oh, we're going to have another cover. And you're like, covers, or they're very vague about that. And I think, whatever, they don't need to be too careful with this. I mean, every little thing, every little drip drop they're putting out there. I mean, I see what happens on our CFB. Like people go bananas for it. I mean, I think it's neat, but like some people like, this is like the second coming for a lot of people.
It is. It is. I started on NCAA Game Breaker, which unfortunately 989 Studios went under, or it just got reshuffled. RIP to Siphon Filter. But so I ended up on NCAA games, and I think everyone's just been waiting for so long and picking apart every little detail and trying to get every little bit of information we can since like they made the Twitter account with like the little heartbeat thing years ago, and that. Which for some EA didn't need to be that cryptic about it, but yeah, it seems like the games everybody's gonna buy it just cause. And at least the decent amount of information we're getting sounds like it's gonna be similar to what they already have planned for NCAA 15 and not a Madden reskin. and hopefully it's not a Madden reskin because then everything's gonna go down. But yeah,
Mhm.
the way they're dripping out the information has left all of us a little bit tweaked, especially with because initially they had the counter that said information coming next week, and they were just like, oh, we're getting the big reveal. Then they switched it. I was like, no, actually the countdown is new cover coming next week, which is just I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, so yeah.
Yeah, I remember there were people hoping there was going to be like a trailer during something like last month, or was it during the tournament
Oh
or the
yeah,
Super?
yeah. I
People are
remember.
very
I think
hopeful.
I talked
People are
about
very
it on here.
hopeful. It's interesting too.
Yeah, during
When I was putting together a list of the old NCAA games, because I remember it wasn't originally called that. It was just Bill Walsh College Football. In fact, the very first edition they couldn't get the schools signed up, so the cover was Bill Walsh talking to clearly a Stanford player, but they had photoshopped out any of the Stanford logos, so the guy just had like a white helmet, and the teams were by their city location or state. So Michigan was still Michigan, but Clemson was Clemson, South Carolina. I at the time I was in college when all of these games were out, and I knew the college names, but I didn't know the cities, so I was confused what College Station, Texas team was supposed to be, and what State College, Pennsylvania. Raleigh, North Carolina was a team, and I'm like, I don't know who Raleigh, North Carolina is. So funny because we were just obviously earlier talking about North Carolina State. But if you want to have a rousing game of South Bend, Indiana versus Los Angeles, not SC, separate school, Los Angeles, you can track down that Bill Walsh College Football. But in 1998, they got the NCAA license. And the funny thing is, there was a one-off third-party developer, Mindscape. I used to have Commodore 64 games by them. That's how old I am, right? But Mindscape did for Genesis create a game that was called NCAA Football. It was a one-off. Then a few years later, the EA got the NCAA license to use the name, and they didn't get it for the college football game. That's the funny part. They got it as a secondary bonus. They had negotiated with the NCAA so they could have a college basketball game called March Madness, because if you know anything about the NCAA, they control that name heavily. So they got that, and then they got permission to use NCAA on anything. So that's when the NCAA football game got its name. 5 games deep into the series. But Mac, I see your hand up.
If EA wants to make money, they should just produce team-specific covers for this game.
Yeah, and it's so funny because most people get them digitally too. So especially for fans like that, just so that when it appears, I guess in your I mean, God, I'm so old. I don't really use game systems anymore. But when they're kind of like you see all your games digitally lined up on your screen, you can just have it be whatever cover you want it to be. That would be awesome. If you're paying $150 for the deluxe edition, it should be you. Like they should just like send them a picture. Boom, you're in the game. Like you're one of the players, and the player has your face. That would be us.
Crazy thing is that actually used to be
I'm
EA
definitely buying physical media.
Excuse me, what did you say?
I said the crazy thing is EA actually did used to have their technology for their Fight Night games.
Oh wow!
Like,
I could see that.
You used to be able to like use the eye toy. I'm aging myself a little bit, but you can use that, take a photo of yourself, or upload a photo online and put your face over your fighter.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is on the PS2, so they should be able to do it now.
Yeah, they should be able to do it now. Kind of just throwing up a few other news items that also wanted to toss out there. I was really happy this got reported. So Las Vegas, I love Las Vegas. So I grew up in Southern California, not in the nice part. I grew up in the armpit. I grew up in Bakersfield. But for me, I live in Minnesota now. People in Minnesota, they always say, I'm going to the cabin. And I'm like, I don't really do cabins. But growing up in Bakersfield, you drive for 4 hours, you went to Vegas. So when I was 5 years old, I started going to Vegas. I've been going to Vegas ever since. I was in Vegas, just a couple of months ago. But they're going to be hosting the college football playoff title game in 2027, which is awesome. That means that's the next option that's open. And this has been a long time coming because they were supposed to host it this season. And for those who weren't around for it, hey, John, I'll let you up here real quick. This is one of the great fiascos of no one had a calendar when they booked it. So the NCAA, the CFP books Las Vegas, and we're assuming Vegas bid for this, and no one bothered to check that it was conflicting in the original 4-team format. It would have been on the same week as the biggest event in Vegas every year, and that is the Consumer Electronics Show. You might go like, why is the conference that big? 200,000 people go to Vegas every year for this show. Like even the Super Bowl would have would maybe move it, but it would be a puncher's chance with the Super Bowl. But college football, as much as we love it, was never going to host a chance of that. Of course, ironically, they made this decision in August 2022 to move it from Vegas. This season it's going to be in Atlanta, and the next season it's in Miami as a makeup game because Miami hosted it during the COVID season. So this year it's going to be not only is it going to be in Atlanta, but we're going to the 12-team playoff. After August 2022, we sorted the playoff situation out. So now the game is not even on the same weekend. That would have been a conflict. So that was the one thing I was happy about with adding the 12-team playoff is that Vegas was suddenly going to be in play to host it at Allegiant Stadium. That's a great time of year to go. I mean, if you don't like it hot, and I don't like it hot, but it's not too cold, Vegas in January is going to be awesome. I can't wait. I'm planning to go for the opener this season, USC LSU. I'll hopefully be in the press box for that one, but that's going to be a much, much hotter experience than that particular game. So exciting. I'm happy to see that. Let's see here. John, I know you're joining us right now, but you missed someone saying Old Dominion has one of those chances to be the G5 champ this season. And I was thinking of you, man. I was thinking of you. What's going on?
Well, first of all, I can see your face. This is a very weird experience.
Yeah. So I decided, since again we're in the absolute dead period of the off season, I saw this little option appear at the bottom of the Twitter Space request. Gosh, like it started in February, and I'm like, I was usually just too tired. I'm like, I'm not doing this. But then I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it's a boring day. Let's sign up. Let's give this a try. And it's only me. It's not any of the guests. But what's on your mind, my man?
Well, first of all, I'm quite honored to be able to see the stash in person on video. That's incredible. But so whoever mentioned Old Dominion, man, I promise it's not my burner account. I hope they had a. Oh Jesus.
Jesus, yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those.
Yeah, I hope. Sorry, I got to compose myself after that. But
yeah, I got that
one.
There we go.
Yeah. Whoever was talking about Old Dominion G5 chance, man. I will buy them all the beer they want at any bar in the Hampton Roads area if that comes true. But the main things I was wanting to ask tonight were
was that Iman, by the way? Iman, were you the one that was you were the one that was all over that, right? Oops, another one. Oh, damn it.
That was me.
No, that wasn't me. No, that wasn't me.
Oh, okay.
That was me. I called out Sunbelt East. Which the funny enough part is I actually was close enough to you, John, that we could actually do that.
Yeah, Ski Mask, I will buy you all the alcohol that you desire if that actually occurs. That's a promise. But yeah, the questions I had was just actually regarding the Conference USA today. Well, that news regarding Missouri State moving to to Conference USA. I'm just kind of curious on what your thoughts are and what you think could be the possible moves going forward. I know they're a full 12, but if are we thinking they're going to try to push to 14 with the idea of maybe some teams leave for a different to a different Group of 5 conference in the future. And additionally, I was also curious about your thoughts about the University of Richmond moving over to the Patriot League, which is a very interesting lateral move for them as a team.
That's interesting. I just want to start with that second one, only because what is why do you find that intriguing? I'm just curious. Why is it because of the cachet of the Patriot League?
It seems like it seems like a weird move because Richmond's always been a pretty dominant team in Colonial. I mean, it's always had a lot of teams that that are regional. I understand that Patriot does that for them too, but it just seems I just to my of course my FCS now is just not super strong since ODU moved up, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of teams in there that are truly competing on the same level as CAA teams were competing in the last decade.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, no, and I agree. It's only because it's so funny. One of our team here at RCFB is actually affiliated with Richmond, and he was just we were all just joking about it that they're moving over there, and they had that great image of the giant spider creature coming out of the off of the horizon. But yeah, they're from what I understand, they're very well-funded university. That's what I get the vibe for them. They are a very well-funded private university. So we'll see how they go there. I wonder if they have any interest in moving up eventually too. That's also a thought. Ski Mask, what's on your mind?
I agree with John. It's a very weird lateral move. I live in Richmond. They are very well funded, extremely well funded. So it's surprising that we decided to move to the Patriot League, which is a little bit. I would say the teams in there aren't as name brand cachet immediately that everyone knows, similar to the rest in the Coastal League. But I guess maybe Delaware moving up sort of made Richmond think about leaving. But I thought they would have just followed them moving up instead of just making a lot of moves. I would say it's also a weird one for a school that has as much money as the University of Richmond does.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of going to John's other question, Conference USA is going to have 12 teams because they're going to have the three new teams. They're going to have Kennesaw State, Delaware, and Missouri State. So they're going to have 12. That'll be at least good for their, staying in strength and total. We'll see how everyone develops. Because Conference USA, for a hot second there, looked like they were left for dead after what happened in that last round of conference realignment. And Jacksonville State ended up being pretty good. That's great. Sam Houston State, they started off weak, but man, they were a cursed team last season. And if they can get any offense going, they should be a better program this season. UTEP's have made a great coaching hire. They stole a good one from Austin Peay, and that only came up more because one of those players got in the tiff with Dion's the Sanders family a couple of weeks ago. But Liberty is certainly going to be the king of that. It was a real crushing thing to see New Mexico State lose Jerry Kill, who went with his quarterback, ironically enough, to be a assist at Vanderbilt. But and I'm not thrilled with who they replaced him with because he was a failure at UNLV, and we'll see how that goes at New Mexico State. But it's a tough job there. We'll see if they kind of recede and some of these other teams kind of rise up. John, I know you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, I will say for all the smack I like to talk about Conference USA, I've been really impressed with their commissioner. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but I've been really impressed with the work because, like you said, that it looked like a dead conference. Several, the last realignment, it looked like it was complete. There's no chance of that coming back. It looked like we're trying to guess where the last several teams were going to go at that point. So for them to really, I think, to really turn this around and get to a 12-team conference but I think, in my opinion, nothing short of incredible to even be at this point.
Yeah, Judy McLeod. She's Commissioner Judy McLeod. She's not bad. She's good. She's been there. She's been there forever now. At this point, it's weird to think. I remember when she was announced, and it was a big deal because she was the first woman to be the head of a FBS conference. But at the same time, she's done some tremendous work there. Iman, what's going on? I saw your hand come up.
I wanted to ask. How do y'all feel about the idea that the Conference USA is probably going to be out of playoff contention because they're too busy, scratching for teams right now, and that a lot of the teams are not really adjusting. For example, let's be honest with Liberty's schedule. Liberty's schedule was hella weak. It was basically a bunch. Their first year, they went 12-0 because the schedule was kind of weak. Troy would go 12-0 with Liberty's schedule. So I just wanted to know how y'all feel about that. Before
and I think with Liberty last season, we have to remember everyone just sort of stumbled. SMU should have probably got that bid, but they had lost a couple of times. And Tulane let everyone down. UTSA kind of just didn't quite make it. All the contenders we were kind of expecting to. Because I remember even before the beginning of last season, they had the lowest ranked of all 133 schedules. Now we're kind of talking about that, joking about that, but in the end, they were able to win out, and that's what they needed. And part of the problem is they also have sometimes a little bit of difficulty scheduling some of their non-conference games to be very strong. They're willing to throw money at that program. They're willing to pay other teams to come play them. But yeah, that was just a perfect storm last season for Liberty, where all the other teams just kind of stumbled. At one point, I don't think anyone preseason thought UNLV would be in the mix as late as they were. But it was just kind of a really weak year for the G5, and that's the team that got spit out that particular year. We've had seasons kind of like that, not necessarily one loss, but I remember when NIU, people were kind of like, well, it's the MAC. We'll see how they do. And they did okay. Western Michigan as well when PJ Fleck was there.
It did not finish
every
strong.
now and again, you'll get that. I think Conference USA this season is going to be definitely, no one's expecting them to be the team to make it. I think what they're hoping for is what the Sun Belt did when they went. I remember when they went down to 10 teams, when they kind of pushed out Idaho and New Mexico State, where they said, look, we're back up. So it's possible. But yeah, I agree. I don't know if this is going to be the season to expect Conference USA. I want to let Elizabeth have a chance too. She's now up here. What's on your mind?
Hey, Bobak. Well, just mentioning Missouri State is going to now be part of what
Bobby
100.
Petrino.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. So I'm a little concerned because when Bobby Petrino was coaching Missouri State, they almost beat us. They almost beat Arkansas.
Did
Yeah.
did you mute or did I just lose audio on
You
that?
lost audio on that. I didn't mute. I'm. Can you hear me? Okay.
Can anyone else hear Elizabeth, or is it
I can.
on my side? Just
Yeah,
Oh
we can.
yeah, we
you
we can
can?
hear.
Oh no. All right, it's on my side. So apologies. I'm gonna reset on my side. Hopefully, doing this in a video one doesn't crash everything. But if it does,
Uh
it was great talking to everyone. But we'll see. I'm gonna go ahead and reset everything because it's like on my end. So I'm gonna go ahead and reset this. Let's see what happens.
I was just thinking back when we played Missouri State in 2022, and they almost. I mean, they came close to beating us, and we were all so nervous because Bobby Petrino. You just never know with him, and we won the game 38-27, which is not a lot. Um, so it's interesting to me that they're now going to be part of the group, but that's okay because again, Bobby Petrino, you never know. I just triggered an old memory of like, hey, they almost beat us. Oh my gosh.
Hey, now he came to work for you guys. So there you go. The Razorbacks
Yeah.
got a good offensive
Who knows
coordinator
what
and a
it's going to be
backup
though?
coach. Yeah, and a backup
Yeah,
coach.
I have no idea, no expectations for the first time in I think 20 years. I'm not going to be like, hey, we're going to win the national championship this year. It's like, you know what? If we win a couple of games, just I'll play. I'm, taking it game by game. No expectation.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting to see how that goes for the Razorbacks this season. I wanted to also bring up another major story that is kind of percolating, and I touched on it very early on, only because I love to always kind of talk about it and the developments because for fans and even hardcore fans, they haven't been paying attention to it because it's a little bit of a boring topic, but it could change the face of college football very rapidly, and that is the potential legal settlement of the House case. So, just to kind of bring you all up to speed, if you haven't been paying attention, because it's boring law stuff, and I get it. My background is I'm an attorney and I teach law, so I can kind of read this stuff and not totally glaze over, although some of this stuff is really boring. So, the House versus NCAA case is two parts. One part is they're trying to get back pay for as many athletes as they're allowed to. And when I say that is sometimes, there's things called statutes of limitations. You can only at a certain point you can't sue other people. It times out. So they're trying to go to as many years of these past athletes pre-NIL that they can get. And they're trying to also figure out how to do revenue sharing moving forward to give athletes a piece of the pie. So that case has been hovering in the background, a couple of others like it. And the real danger is if it goes to trial, it could be catastrophic for the NCAA and potentially some of the schools in the process. So, usually, when you get litigation like this, when you get a lawsuit like this, even though one side would rather just straight out win, you oftentimes get a settlement. And they're not simple when you're talking about something of this size. Um, if the NCAA were to lose the case that was filed against them, they could get something called treble damages. What does that mean? It means the damages are all multiplied by 3. And when you're talking in the billions range, that's a lot of money, obviously. So what they are doing now are a complicated set of settlement talks. And Ross Dellinger, I respect his work a lot. He's been on top of this. I remember I read a really negative comment somewhere that's like, oh, he just works for the NCAA. I'm like, he doesn't work for the NCAA. He's actually just really good at reporting what's going on over there so you can actually understand what's happening. But anyway, so the latest numbers, apparently there is a settlement summary sheet that's been going around to all of the heads of the ACC. And because right now they're having their meetings, NCAA President Charlie Baker was down there and somebody was able to kind of get one of these documents. And right now they're looking at settling to have damages being the back pay of 2.7 and change billion dollars. That's a lot of money, but it's not all at once. It would be over 10 years. And somebody actually crunched the numbers in his own article. It would be basically powerful conference teams would be deducted from their NCAA distribution a couple of $1 million a year. And when you add up all the teams together, you can start to build something that gets towards that $2.7 billion mark. So it would be somewhat of a deduction. And then there would be up to, and this is I should be very clear, it's up to an opportunity for schools to share $22 million of their revenue with their athletes. Now, they're not required to max that out. Some schools will not be able to max that out because they will not be receiving that much from their TV deals. But it allows them to kind of create that. And then I think the NCAA, Charlie Baker is trying to kind of come up with something that is somewhat of a win-win. He would love to police the collectives and kind of have some of the rules enacted to kind of keep a better eye of what is being paid out there, what are the values, things of that nature. So that's part of the negotiation right now. Again, when I read this kind of dropped on Reddit, on RCFB, some of these other things, people are like, oh, well, it was nice knowing you all. College football's doomed. This actually is quite the opposite. If they come up with a settlement, it would probably preserve almost everything we have now. Because, again, when you're talking $2.7 billion, it's a lot of money. It sounds like a lot of money. But when you realize they could do it over 10 years, especially if they settle, if they lose a trial, not only could they maybe owe 2.7 times 3, a lot of, almost $9 billion, but then they might have to pay it all at once. That would almost immediately wreck the NCAA and pull a lot of schools down with them. So the idea of over 10 years compensating the damages of $2.7 billion, and then, distributing some of the revenue to the players, not great, but they could live with it. And that it's a classic saying, if you're ever negotiating a big negotiation, you almost want to come to the point where you can say, I can live with that. And I think they're coming close to something where they could live to it. And why is it coming up right now? Why is it happening now more than ever? It's because from what we are told, again, a lot of this stuff is just being leaked out, but the plaintiffs' attorneys who know they have the upper hand, they know that courts are not fans of the NCAA. The Supreme Court proved that with that 9-0 decision in an Alston case a few years ago that led to the NIL era that we are in now. They've given them a deadline basically by the end of May. So from what I understand, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to expect the P4 conferences to come up with what they feel on the settlement and potentially either accept it, maybe counteroffer. But we will likely, I think, come to a conclusion on this. And for those who haven't been necessarily paying attention to it, it's going to be a big shock to hear what's going on in college football, because this is something where if they don't come to a settlement, it could turn into a trial that could be, it could not only, because I know a lot of people don't like the NCAA. I get that. They have earned that right. But there are a lot of programs that rely on them that are not the money winners. We're talking D2, D3, even some of the D1 teams that aren't particularly, not necessarily football schools that aren't as strong as the others. So would there be a result if they went away? There would be some solution to come up with it. But maybe the Big Ten and SEC will eventually create an alternative to it. But this is one of those kind of situations that I thought I hit on. There's some additional reporting on it. I'm just going to touch on that really quick. The thought is it could, because again, Charlie Baker's gone on the record at the ACC meetings that he thinks it would create clarity. And that's really what it is. When we talk about big lawsuits, billion-dollar lawsuits between mega organizations, and here you have a class action suit of all these players versus, which is basically a huge entity, versus another huge entity, NCAA and all of the teams. When you're in a lawsuit like that, a lot of times you're trying to look for clarity, certainty. If you're a big company and you're being sued for billions of dollars, you just want to settle it. You want to know what it is. You want certainty so your investors aren't panicking of how low your stock's going to go. NCAA is not a business like that, but it's still similar. They want certainty. They want to be able to then use the settlement as an opportunity to, the court would probably be willing to then take all the other outstanding lawsuits on this same topic and say, like, all right, you're all part of this settlement discussion. You're all together. This is all done. No more lawsuits on this topic. It's done. So that's where some of that certainty aspect comes to it. The ability to know how much money is owed. There's no surprises. It's not going to be $9 billion. It'll be like $2.7 billion. Again, it's can you live with it? And I think that's what the NCAA is going for. There was an interesting Athletic article on this, that would this House settlement potentially actually have the unexpected result of killing off the walk-on programs at all of these universities. Walk-ons are kind of an interesting situation now, only because NIL has made walk-ons kind of a potential sideways opportunity to avoid scholarship limits. Like you can have walk-on, give them an NIL that's the equivalent of their scholarship or maybe even more, and they can be on the roster and not against your scholarship limit. But it seems to be that particularly for the teams that are not the top of the P5, the ones or the P4, the ones that can really just have these unlimited budgets, this might be an opportunity to save some money and cut some costs in an opportunity, through travel or equipment savings, to get payments that could go towards covering the revenue that needs to go to the other players. It might head off potential litigation in terms of some of the other things that might come into play for walk-ons that might come up for other teams. And again, they're trying to come up with ways that again, I'm not saying walk-ons are going to go away, but one of the potential ramifications for this settlement of coming up with a revenue sharing model might affect them, and we'll see where that goes. Let's see here. Actually, I see someone who wants to come up here, and I know this person. Let's see here, Sean. We'll get you up here in a jiff. As Sean's coming up, one other topic I just wanted to mention. Calimony, which is one of my favorite topics. We were one of the first organizations to say Calimony. Some people were like, payments from UCLA to Cal for going to the Big Ten. I mean, no, Calimony is perfect. So the UC Board of Regents have apparently agreed that UCLA for the next, and apparently we're going for 6 years, but they've said for 3 years, UCLA now has to pay University of California, Berkeley, the mother school of the entire, Cal is the original UC. That's why they got to be called Cal rather than UC Berkeley in sports. Cal is going to get $10 million per year of Calimony from UCLA because the Board of Regents that oversees all of those universities said they have to pay their brother. Or is it a spousal thing? I love the Calimony thing. Does that mean like our awkward weekends when Cal has to bring UC Davis to go visit UCLA at his bachelor pad in Los Angeles because, he's got the cool sports car, and can hang out with all their cousins, UC Santa Cruz, UC Santa Barbara, UC San Diego, and maybe, I don't know, not get in any trouble with UC Riverside. But, accidents happen before the relationship collapsed. UC Merced was born. But I'm very interested to see how all of that goes out there. But before I take that too far, Sean, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I was just wanting your opinion. So obviously today they released the first college game day is at Mississippi State and Notre Dame. I thought they missed a great opportunity. Of course, I'm a West Virginia fan, so of course I wanted that WVU and Penn State, and especially with that being such a big rival within the past and stuff. I felt like WVU last year kind of proved them, kind of proved everybody wrong in a sense, and should get the respect. Do you think that it's just still they want to see more? If that was just kind of a luck type of thing. And also, I want to know, how do they determine that? Like, how do they determine where they're going to play week by week?
Well, it's usually that home team in a lot of ways. I totally missed that because I saw the news about Fox picking their big noon games this early. So it's going to be Mississippi State at Notre Dame. Oh, yeah, that is an odd one. Yeah. That is an odd one. I get why they don't want to do necessarily like a neutral site game. I get why like USC versus LSU would be off the table. Penn State would have been a fun one, especially Morgantown. Like that would be exciting. Can you imagine? We all know how fired up West Virginia fans can get. And the idea of that game being a rivalry game, being two big, passionate fan bases, both with reasonable shots, with playoff hopes in their minds, I think that would be an interesting one. And especially, you're right, after last year, Neil Brown saved his job, proved everyone wrong, brought the West Virginia team into a place where, they could, it was good. It was better than expected. That was definitely one of the biggest surprises early on last season. I think that would be interesting. And I agree. I think West Virginia is one of those teams going into this season where they're plausible. They would be a dark horse potential eventually, because the Big 12 is we were just talking about. The Big 12 is completely unpredictable. They are the least predictable conference of the P4 heading into this season. And of course, the champion of probably the top, it'll probably be the P4 teams, but the champion of the highest ranked champions will get to be the top 4 seeds, no matter where they're ranked. Like you could be ranked 12 and be your conference champion, and as long as the G5 champ, or as long as as long as there's one team ranked below you that's conference champ, the next highest one, you will be the one to make it there. So as long as you're one of the top 4, I don't know why I phrased it that way. As long as you're one of the top 4 ranked conference champions. So there could be some really funny expectations of a team no one expects getting a 4 seed or even a 3 seed. So even the school, I don't want to denigrate the Mountaineers, but West Virginia, you're as long as you guys can win the Big 12 and stay in that ranking, you guys could get a bye in the first week. That's the exciting thing. There has never been a more exciting time to be a college football fan, in my opinion, than this season. Like, the opportunities are way more open than they ever have been. Now, granted, it's still tough if you're a G5 fan, but still, this is by far the most exciting season, I think. It's so funny though, saying that, I'm looking at the West Virginia schedule. If they can keep winning, obviously Penn State, Albany, it should be easy. Pitt, I'm not sure what to make of Pitt. Kansas could be a good game. I don't know who else is playing on October 5th when you guys go to Oklahoma State, but that could be a really good matchup. Or even Kansas the week before, but that would be a fun one. I'd love to see game day go to Morgantown. That's always fun. Iman, I see your hand up.
Oh yeah, it's look like a buzzsaw in the Big 12 right now, like a real buzzsaw. I don't think. Do you think Arizona still like what it used to be? And also,
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was number one. Do you think that Arizona is going to be what it used to be post the move to the coach leaving Washington? Number two, do you think that we might have 2 group of 5 teams in the 12-team playoff? And 3, do you think 12 should? I think that 12 should stay at pat. How do you feel about it? That like 12 should be the amount of playoff spots after this.
Well, I agree with 12. I agree it should be 12. 12 is the best argument I've heard so far, only because the arguments to make it bigger are just to lock in more guaranteed spots for the SEC and Big Ten. I'm just kind of like, The 12-team playoff's great only because, and I was at first I was like, why 12? Why not 8? But it makes sense to give the conference championships a little more weight, because if you win your conference championship and you're one of the better schools, you get that first round bye. I love that part. I love the fact that Notre Dame doesn't play a conference title game, so they'll have to play a first round game no matter what. I think that's great. That's a good trade off. And Notre Dame was part of the design process, so they are fine with that too. I don't think 2 G5 teams will make it. That would be a crazy season. That would be like a 2007 season. And I remember the 2007 season. That would take real chaos. You'd need a team. The way it could happen is you'd have 2 Cincinnati level teams, or maybe a Boise State and a Cincinnati level team, like at the same time, where somehow they both claw their way in, or you get somehow 2 undefeated G5 programs in the same conference that are really good. And then one of them has to win the conference title game. Somehow they don't meet. Well, it can happen. Some of these conferences have gotten pretty huge. And then perhaps both of them get in. That would be a pretty tall order. You'd need a lot of P5 teams to fall. Now, going back to the Big 10, probably the Big 12, Arizona's interesting because they somehow kept Noah Fafita and T-Mac, their wide receiver. They've got some great players still there. I don't know with Brent Brennan, winning the way he did at San Jose State wasn't that impressive if you don't know the history of San Jose State. They've never been that strong of a school. It's tough to be a G5 team in the Bay Area because the money it costs just to run anything in that area is extremely high. That was, as I said, many years ago, I went to Mountain West Media Days, and it wasn't the San Jose State coach. I'm not going to say which coach it was, but it was a coach who had been an assistant in the Bay Area. And he said that guy has the toughest job of us all, because he's like, the cost of living is so high that even though we're a P5 job, probably not P5 job, but even though we're a FBS job, we can't pay our assistants the amount that it takes to really have a family in the Bay Area if you're at San Jose State. So he's like, I'm either looking for really young coaches if you're there, or you're looking for guys who are empty nesters who just want to keep coaching, and they don't mind living out there and living in kind of a condo or something like that. But so that's why I say Brent Brennan had a tough kind of situation there, that he was able to make some wins appear. But I don't know. Arizona, they've got talent, but we'll see where they go. I mean, there's so many other interesting opportunities out there. So many teams and so many. I mean, Kansas is the team I'm really looking forward to see how they do. I mean, they have that real opportunity there, especially if Jalen Daniels stays healthy. I think they're going to be an interesting one to see. Houston, they're kind of a quiet pick. I've heard a few people think that they have a chance to go there to make it further, but it'll be interesting to see. Ski Mask, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to excuse me. I wanted to chime in on the two group of five teams in the playoffs. I think it's possible, but not this first season. I think it's going to be similar to what we saw with uh, UCF, Cincinnati, Boise State, and TCU, where you sort of have to have a chain of going undefeated like 2 seasons in a row before you get before the consideration happens. And I think the American and Sun Belt could possibly have repeat undefeated teams, and that could possibly lead to it. But other than that, I don't think it's going to be anything off the jump.
Sean, your hand's up. Did you want to add something to this?
Not in particularly this thing. I just had one other question.
Oh, please go ahead.
I just want to know what your opinion is about. Do you think eventually we're going to go to the college football will eventually be something like the NFL where you go to AFC, NFC? Hopefully, y'all haven't already talked about this. I kind of got on late, but
No.
with everything, Big 12 and the SEC is kind of obviously the two top conferences right now, also the Big 10. But do you think everything will eventually go to two conferences, major conferences, and just go from there?
I hope not, but I think part of what's going to happen here, and in a way, this House case settlement, the NCAA versus House settlement that I was talking about earlier, one of the benefits is it means it'll probably keep the current situation closer to where it is and the radical shift that would have happened had that case moved forward to trial and blown up the NCAA, because then it would have been just like we would have been Mad Max rules for a little bit there until we figured out who is going to take over. But the ACC, their survivability right now is definitely questionable. We'll see if they come apart. If they do, I'm not quite sure where it would go, but I don't know. Actually, let me take a step back. What could shift it is if the courts decide that players deserve X amount of dollars, and if that number gets too high, it could potentially put a situation where only certain programs can match that amount of money. And that would create a great kind of separation. I mean, one of the interesting thoughts that came up this past week, a fan of FCS, a Montana fan, made a post on Reddit saying he was worried about the existential situation of the FCS. Can they survive? Are those teams going to survive? And I thought, no, they'll survive. In fact, if anything, what would be more likely to happen, and this is just purely speculation, but as the things we know that are happening, as the conferences are going to settle this House case, and players are going to probably, I mean, it's a certainty at this point. Congress just does not have their act together on this particular topic. Without Congress protecting the NCAA and saying that the people that are student athletes can never be employees, and it's not going to happen. It's just not. All of these bills that come up, they never move anywhere because not enough people care about it in the legislatures. We're going to get to a point in the next couple of years where players are going to be ruled as employees. So they're going to have to sort that one out. And if that turns into this, Super League gets formed, a new division of the P4 programs that can probably all the P4 programs and then the G5 programs that can afford to be part of this. Like Liberty will pay anything. They'll you just ask them. No one lets them into a P4. They'll pay whatever you need. Some of these other programs move up there. I'm curious to see if the G5 and the FCS decide to kind of maybe merge. Maybe not completely. Maybe some of the FCS conferences just join the G5, and you get perhaps a conference of not just the G5, but some of those top FCS programs, and like a Montana, like the Big Sky or the Missouri Valley Conference, who's ever left there now that they lost their last Missouri team to FBS. But I saw a couple of hands go up here. So let's see here. Iman, and then we'll go to Mac. Sorry.
No, Mac was first.
Oh, sure. Yeah, for sure. Mac, what's up?
What are your thoughts about the NFL trying to strong arm college football by putting 2 games on up against the playoff?
Oh man. Well, to be fair, the playoff, I think though that's the NCAA has put itself in an awkward position with the way some of this goes because from what I understand, it's actually the those are the earliest dates the NFL is permitted to put games on days that would conflict with college football typically. And there's actually I forgot what controls that. My friend at CBS Sports, who I do the other show with, Shahan J. Raja, knows this stuff off the top.
I believe that's the Sports Broadcasting Act.
Yeah, and he and Dennis Dodd did a really good article about things we don't expect coming out of the college football playoff format. So we're going to get those games conflicting with each other because the NCAA is entering a zone that the NFL thought they had, and we're kind of kept to that and kept out of the rest of it. So we're going to end up with some pretty. It'll be very curious to see how those ratings look. I hope no one draws a conclusion that it just means the playoffs aren't popular if more casual fans would rather watch the NFL. I mean, in a dream scenario, it's late enough in the NFL season where they might be pretty dog NFL games, regular season NFL games. We're not quite the playoffs yet. And we might see a little bit of a bump. But it reminds me, for those of you who remember the second year of the CFP, the first year, the ratings were beyond the wildest imaginations of everyone involved. Like those games did so well on TV. It was phenomenal. The next year they did the stupidest thing ever. And they thought, we're going to put the semifinals on New Year's Eve. Now, I don't care who you are. That is a tough competition. And those absolutely, they spent so much money promoting those New Year's Eve games. They hired Jimmy Kimmel to be the spokesperson of all of it. They had all these commercials where they were clearly dressed like a New Year's party watching the college football playoff. As it turns out, the momentum for society would rather just hang out with their friends and go to New Year's Eve parties everywhere. So we'll see if it's that level of catastrophe or if it's a bit of a dip. But it's a shame. I'm not a fan of it, but it kind of they don't want to move those playoff games on the other days, and the NFL is certainly not going to move off of their day because they are at a level of money that I mean, we all saw what Jared Goff is getting. Like, it's crazy to think how much money he's getting, and his alma mater Cal is financially struggling. By the way, one of the quick footnotes on the Calimony thing. Cal announced that they're like building a new workout facility and they're putting $1.5 million into it. And a lot of people were like, $1.5 million. So that in the Bay Area, that's not a lot of money. And you're a P5 team. I mean, people joke that they're going to now have a whole layer of Bowflex machines for all of their players, but we'll see where that goes. Iman.
I wanted to ask about now that like the Pac-12 is effectively dissolved because Washington and Oregon State are now going to the Big 12. How do you feel like how are they gonna do? And now the ACC is looking like it's about to fall apart. It looks like there's gonna be a whole lot of middle of the road power teams that are really just jumping for the name, image, and likeness. And I wanted to talk about also. I wanted to disagree about the FCS and the Group of Five merging because the Group of Five doesn't want to do that. The whole idea of they left the FCS is because one, they either they wanted the money, or two, they truly believed that they were better. Hence why Norfolk State is not going up to FBS. So I don't know about them merging. I guess it's going to be more of like a fight for to be in the middle. I don't know. It looks like they're because a lot of these Group of Five teams are like they're leaving just to be in the middle of the pack of the Big 12 or be in the middle of the pack of the SEC. Or not the SEC, but the middle of the pack of the Pac-12 where it used to be Pac-12. So it just seems kind of awkward to me.
Yeah, I think, and the more I think about that, I wouldn't be surprised if the G5 rather just backfills with some of the best left of the FCS, like the Montanas. Maybe they'll somehow get North Dakota State to finally decide to move, and some of those programs. But I agree because some of those other programs, some of the bottom of the FCS, just wouldn't be a good matchup. I mean, the NEC would be the Northeast Conference would be a really weird matchup for a lot of teams. Like Bryant moving up would be a disaster. Duquesne, it'd be kind of an oddball. But there are some programs still left there that could move up. Like, FAMU's flirted with it so many times that maybe they have their excuse to finally make that move up and kind of backfill the G5 with some qualified teams. Let's see here. Ski Master Murphy, your hands up.
Yeah, I sort of just thought about it in terms of, you know, the Pac-12 collapsing and figuring out, because you guys were saying the G5 might separate and stuff like that. I think in order for college football to keep going on with for it to exist, especially with the TV contracts and greed that some of the teams have, I think the colleges and the NCAA are going to have to work out like a similar agreement to how the English Premier League basically is sort of not part of the English Football Association, but is part of it, and just allow certain big schools to break away and bring in all the money, and then allow it to trickle back down. I think they're gonna have to work out some agreement because I think if all these teams just try to keep creating these super conferences, something's got to give. And I think they need to make sure a way that everybody doesn't get wiped out with the few big schools trying to take all the money.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it'll be interesting to see how that gets settled out there. And I mean, yeah, just going back actually to something I remember what that Amon was saying too. I mean, with all these teams going into these big conferences, especially there's going to be teams that didn't realize they're not the top of they're never going to be the top of the SEC or the top of the Big Ten now that they've expanded to the point where the middle's gotten bigger and maybe the bottom's gotten bigger too. Going back, by the way, before I forget, some of the interesting kind of conversations that have come out about what's going on. I believe John Wilner, the great reporter who's very good about at least keeping up with what's going on with the remnants of the Pac-12. Apparently, there's this entire conversation going on between the Big 12 and Oregon State and Wazoo. It sounds like, from what we're gleaning, that the conversation is they wouldn't be opposed to letting those two teams in, but they would want an arrangement closer to what we saw with SMU or Stanford and Cal going to the ACC. Basically, like, we'd like you to forego a significant amount of money before we do that. So that'll be an interesting one to see if that develops out, because that would be fun. I mean, everyone's hoping that they land somewhere, and certainly the Big 12 seemed like one of the more credible locations for them. And that might be a somewhat happier ending in the long run. I don't know for those two teams. I mean, certainly that's been a point of contention for where they're going to go. They have 2 years. They have 2 years to figure it out, because they basically got enough money left from the teams that are left to be fully funded for 2 years, and the NCAA has given them 2 years to figure out what they're going to do about their conference, because you can't have a 2-team conference. So that's the timeline. They've been allowed 2 years to figure it all out. So on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This was really interesting. This is the first time I've done a video one, so thank you all for your patience. That was kind of interesting. Almost an hour and a half. Usually it goes for about an hour in the off season, but it was just fun to hear from all of you, and we had great participation. Thanks all of you. Thanks Mac. Thanks Sean. Thanks Ski Master Murphy. Thanks Iman. Thanks Elizabeth, and thanks to a couple of the other folks who were on here a little bit earlier. My name is Bobak Ha'Eri. I'm one of the folks that runs our CFB. I also am part of co-host of a podcast for Advanced Media, the College Football Survivor Show, with Shahan Jayaraja of CBS Sports. You can check that out. When this wraps up, I have no idea if the video stays recorded, but I'm going to go ahead and take care of getting the audio portion up to wherever you get your podcast. Is RCFB Talk 193. This will also automatically turn into a recording here on X, aka Twitter. Who knows? Maybe the video will show up again there too. I have no idea. This is the first time we're doing it. It's all new to me. So on behalf of all of us, thank you. Now I'm going to hang up and listen.